Would you please stand for acknowledgement of country? Thank you. City of Victor Harbor acknowledges the Ramangeri and the national custodians. We acknowledge their deep connection. Pay our respects to respect is extended.
The City of Victor Harbor is committed to diversity, equity and inclusion. We respect people of all ages, abilities, genders, sexualities, religions, cultures.
We recognise the brave individuals served and serve. Remember those who have lost their lives and sacrificed service to us.
Mighty God, we ask you to bless this country, out to be an agent of change. People of this city, direct and prosper its deliberations, the honouring of the name and of the.
Please be seated. Welcome everybody to the special council meeting for tonight. There are a number of items on the agenda of interest, and I welcome members of the gallery. It's a very big gallery, and I do believe that we have got overflow outside watching the live streaming television in the foyer. Can I please ask you to please be quiet? I know that there are some emotive topics on the agenda tonight, but it's very difficult for councillors to pay attention and to think really clearly if there is disturbance from the gallery. So once again, thank you so much for coming tonight, and for those listening on our live streaming, because I know that there were a number that couldn't get here that were wanting to listen to the debate tonight. If you could just keep quiet, that would be great. I do want to remind councillors of their requirements of disclosure of material, actual or perceived conflict of interest in relation to items that are on tonight's agenda. If you can please let us know if you have a material or actual conflict prior to that item coming, that would be great. We have an apology from Councillor Burns, who is still on leave, and Councillor Quinton, he's able to. So we move to the first item of business. Councillor Mann.
Mayor Jenkins, I'd like to declare a general as my professional role conflict by leaving the chamber.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mann. Councillor Henderson.
I'd like to propose we move this item en bloc.
You're happy to move both en bloc? Okay. Do I have a seconder to move the recommendation en bloc? Don't agree with it being done en bloc?
No, I prefer to debate them individually, please, because they're two different items.
Thank you. You're happy to move the first item, Councillor Henderson? And do I have a mover for the second item? Sorry, do I have a seconder for that first item? Thank you very much. Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Henderson, would you like to speak to the first item? The first recommendation is that Council decline to provide any further support, in principle or otherwise, for the Bluff Marina proposal submitted by Mr Mark Taplin under Council's unsolicited policy.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At the March Ordinary Council meeting, I spoke strongly against Council giving any in principle or financial support to this unsolicited proposal.
Sorry, carry on. Go on.
Yeah. Because of the cultural significance of the Bluff to our First Nations people. I had spoken to some of our First Nations people, and I knew their feelings were very much against the idea of this development. I couldn't, of course, speak on their behalf, but since then we've had Mark and Cedric, two of our First Nations people, speak to us in this chamber 2 weeks ago. And no one listening to them on that evening could have denied the passion and also the anguish with they spoke about this proposed development. It is something they definitely do not want. This must be the most significant cultural sacred site to our First Nations people in the whole region. It means very much to them. You could see that in their faces and in their voice and in their passion and anguish, as I mentioned. I've also stated in this chamber previously that there's already been too much development on the bluff, and Mark reiterated that in this chamber 2 weeks ago. Also, even considering development on the bluff goes against our Reconciliation Action Plan, which we've only just recently released. It's not our development, it's not a council development, it's an unsolicited proposal, and the developer's responsibility to go out to community consultation if he wishes to do so. I don't believe it's a council responsibility to do that. That would set a precedent for every unsolicited proposal that comes to us in the future. Would expect that same community consultation from the council. And I'll speak to it now, and I'll reiterate it in the next number 2, that I consider $30,000 to go to community consultation a complete misuse of ratepayer dollars.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'll just say something quickly. Similar to Councillor Henderson there, after the presentation that we heard the other week, it showed and reflected the cultural significance of the site and how important that is. And then on top of that as well, like I said in the previous meeting about this topic, like convention centre, great idea, but I feel it might be more beneficial towards the centre of Victor, where other businesses can benefit, and the whole city central can benefit from that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Does anybody else want to speak in relation to the motion? Councillor Kemp, Councillor Schiller, Councillor Quimvera, and then Councillor Schofield. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. At the moment, I'm sort of in two minds whether I support this motion or not, due to the fact that under the unsolicited bid policy, it's about open transparency, communication with developers who want to come to Victor Harbor and provide some development here. The key factors in this, what it means by in principle support, it's really in the writing afterwards. It's about what we did. The council, and I'll go back to the original in providing principal support, that council provided in principle support for the Bluff Marina proposal for the purpose of and subject to further discussions and negotiations with the South Australian Government. Now that's been carried out. To me, that resolution is finished and completed. So it's in the key areas of what is the in principle support is going to contain, to put a blanket on that and televising to people in the future, don't come to Victor Harbor because you put something in principle support from council, they won't support it. It's about the criteria is what we're supporting. So I think this flies in the face of our unsolicited bid policy about how developers engage with the City of Victor Harbor for any future developments down here. We want to put ourselves as a nation of destination, as a tourist hub on the Fleurieu. And again, whether this proposal gets up or not, because it's not council decision, it's a state government decision, is about the fact is that are we going to close the door to any developers here because of how we treat them in principle support. I think we need to think carefully about how that happens. And I think that we should maintain an open mind about what we're telling our people of Australia or anywhere else, you know, about Victor Harbor and what we're here for. And again, I said, this is not tonight, these two motions are not about council making a decision to build a marina with Mr Taplin. It's about another process, which I think we need to keep open and transparent to our community and also to people in the future, how they deal with Victor Harbor. So in that in mind, I just feel that we just need to keep the process and the policy open and transparent to people.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Schiller.
Hi. I'd just like to say that throughout this whole process, I've been engaged a lot with Mark, spoke to him prior to being elected, and I spoke to him in person before the first vote came about and sat down and had a number of questions that I put to him. I also went out to the Bluff area. I looked at the location that he was proposing to remove rock from, to place apartments and the actual development, which is on Crown land. I also talked to a lot of people, both tourists and locals in that area. So I've done a lot of work trying to get into and engage with people to get their understanding of what they felt about this particular development. I think it's a great idea, and I think that the development itself has a lot of holes in the proposal as it stands. I think the community, as we've heard, the difficulty is the location. People are feeling very uncomfortable about the location. And so we've got to look at the fact that we've got First Nations people that are feeling aggrieved about that location. Our own community are also concerned about the bluff, and in the master plan, it did clearly show that they wanted to keep that in a natural state. My first reaction prior to this coming to council is that I thought that the unsolicited proposal didn't have enough detail in it, and I put a lot of those questions to Mark at the time at our meeting, and things like looking at removal of the rock and how much of that rock would be required to do things like build the breakwater and to substantially increase the size of the car park. Also, the question about who was funding this particular project, multiple technical issues with environment and just the aesthetics. If I had have got more detail prior to this date, I would have had a clearer understanding of what this development would look like, but I feel that I haven't got enough detail. So today I'll be voting against this proposal and this unsolicited proposal as it stands right now. But I think the community, both the for and against, need to look at each other's sides, and a marina may be a possibility in a different location. So the principles of what's been put up should be looked at again into the future. So today I'll vote against this particular motion, but I'm not anti-development, and I think both sides need to be heard.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Councillor Quimbera.
Thank you, Mayor. Where do I begin? I'm absolutely appalled at the move to withdraw the support of the marina proposal before the whole of the Victor Harbour community has been consulted. This council rolled out the red carpet for representatives of the Ngarrindjeri Aboriginal Corporation, NAC for short, while we are suggesting now to shut out the rest of the residents from having their say. It's arrogant, it's authoritarian, and it's undemocratic. I remind elected members in this chamber that we are not answerable to NAC, but we are answerable to the ratepayers of the City of Victor Harbour. It is our primary responsibility to hear what they have to say and act accordingly. You cannot claim to represent all Victor Harbour ratepayers with fairness and integrity after giving one stakeholder a say and then denying the same opportunity to the rest of the ratepayers who fund this council. I remind elected members that our very own Mayor said, the Victor Harbour community deserved to be able to have a formal say on the marina proposal, and that it was the fairest thing to do. Those were her words. And I asked elected members why now all of a sudden it's being implied the community does not deserve a formal say, whether for or against. If it's because NAC said they're opposed to the marina, then I must remind all elected members that NAC does not, and I repeat, does not have veto power over what this council does. Their opinion is not the only opinion, and their opinion does matter, but it's not the only one. We should by all means listen to it, and we have. We've given them the time to talk. Now it's time for the rest of the community to have a say. I'm getting a lot of calls about the marina proposal, and from what I'm hearing of our residents and ratepayers, there is obviously a significant degree of misinformation in our community about this proposal. They deserve to know the facts and and be respected to their say. That is what this consultation is about. Nothing more, nothing less. If the marina proposal was to have the consultation and it was majority voted down, I would support that decision because that's what the people want. Essentially, this would be, if this does go ahead and we're not allowed to see this, essentially this would be another sad story of the Hindmarsh Island Bridge all over again. Let me be absolutely clear. I'm not opposing to making accommodations for cultural sensitivity of Indigenous Australians with respect to developments in Victor Harbor. What I'm telling you is that this is only one of the factors that must be considered when assessing the development. What I am telling you, the primary factor you must consider is the view of all the ratepayers that fund this council. If you do not agree with this, that is my belief, you have no business being on this council. I'll be making it abundantly clear to the people of Victor Harbor that councillors who vote to withdraw support of the marina proposal place more importance on the lone opinion of NAC than they do on the opinions of the other people that live here and pay rates. This consultation is about letting all people in Victor Harbor have a say, and then moving forward with a consensus. At its essence, this is about being democratic. We can say we want to be transparent and democratic till the cows come home, but only our actions will be remembered. I'll also be calling a division after this vote, for this vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corimbo. Councillor Schofield.
Wow. I'm not against development, but I do have some serious concerns about the proposal that's been put forward, and not completely confident in the answers that were provided for me. I understand that the people of Victor Harbor, and when I talk about the people of our community, I'm not saying that they are either from British, Indonesian, First Nations, or whomever. I'm here to represent every ratepayer in Victor Harbor, not just a few. So when I come into the chamber, I listen to all the facts that are being given. My personal opinion doesn't come into it. And I'm sitting here still not wondering. I'm wondering just how I'm going to vote in a couple of minutes' time. Because the majority of people that have contacted me are against the development. A few people are for the development. Quite a lot of their letters are threatening. If you don't do this, if the council doesn't do something else. And that doesn't help you to really have a clear understanding and make a clear decision. I believe that our ratepayers should have a say, but my biggest concern is, and everybody talks about, this is going to cost us $30,000 that's in an already a budget that is running close to the wind. If it goes out to public consultation, my belief is that the developer should be paying the $30,000. For it is his development, it will be his business, he will be gaining any income from it, and apart from some jobs for our ratepayers, honestly, I don't think that's fair. So I'm still sitting here. Yes, I'd like a marina, but like some of the other elected members, I think it should be in a different place. My husband was in the Life Saving Club and he doesn't believe that the position that the cruise boats are coming in is an ideal place, especially when we have storms. So I still sit here wondering, how do I vote? For the environment, for our people to have a say. But I have listened to everyone in the room and I've listened to the people that have rung me, sent me emails and messages. It's a hard call. Do our ratepayers want the extra funding and money put onto their rates for a development that may not go through? That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Councillor Henderson, would you like to close the debate? I think everybody's spoken, haven't they? Yep. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would say the only factor to consider is our First Nations hurt and anguish at the very thought of this sort of development at the Bluff. Like other councillors, I'm not against development per se, but this is just the wrong place for this type of development. The Bluff is state government land, yes, and any application would have to go through various state departments for approval. But first and foremost, it is First Nations land. They've had ownership of the Bluff, and its significance has been important to them for 60,000 years, long before the rest of us came to invade this country 200 plus years ago. Native title existed long before it was written on pieces of paper. Even the granite rocks along the bottom of the Bluff, in the Ngarrindjeri dreaming story, those rocks were originally sea creatures turned to granite. So even the thought of the removal of those rocks shouldn't be considered. As I said earlier, Mark and Cedric spoke with passion and a lot of anguish about the very thought. They said that nothing could be done about the development that's already happened on the Bluff, although you could tell they were not happy with some of that already. And to further develop the Bluff would be absolute sacrilege.
Thank you, councillors. I now put this to the vote. All those in favour of the first recommendation, that council decline to provide any further support in principle or otherwise for the Bluff Marina proposal submitted by Mark Taplin under the council's unsolicited proposal policy. All those in favour? And those against? Okay, thank you. I need to make a casting vote. In November 2020, Council received an unsolicited proposal from Mr Taplin requesting in principle support for Bluff Marina proposal. Council resolved to seek further information from Mr Taplin in regards to both the non-economic benefits of the proposal, such as the social and environmental benefits, to enable Council to further consider the matter. This recommendation is about Mr Taplin's project. It is not about our unsolicited bid process, and his project is going through the unsolicited bids process. It's a process that we have so that bids can be assessed at various points in time during that process. I concur with Councillor Schiller's observations that there are lots of questions that remain unanswered, even since November 2020. Back in November 2020, Council provided in principle support to Mr Taplin in order that he got support from the state government and that he went further and answered a number of questions that we had asked because we did not feel that we had the answers there. The Council has continued to liaise and engage with Mr Taplin about both the proposal and more recently engage with him in relation to the Bluff Master Plan. Mr Taplin has advised that he has not been successful in receiving written support from any state government departments or ministers back from when we suggested that he go to state government. However, he still wanted to proceed with his idea for a major development on the Bluff and the surrounding waters. It is very unusual and would set a precedent if Council paid for such a public consultation for private developers' ideas. If somebody has the money for that sort of private development, they should be able to go to public consultation themselves. We would be better off using that money to see the public opinion in relation to a council project for a marina or a boat launching facility which have been on our books for a number of years at the Eastern Beach area, which is near the basketball courts and the yacht club. And there have been proposals there to put a boat launching facility, because as you know, our boat launching facility has reached its peak. That's been on the books for a long time, and a number of community members, including our Boating Advisory Committee, want us to follow up with that idea. The Bluff has significant heritage and cultural value. Its creation is depicted in Ngarrindjeri and Raminjeri Dreaming Story, and it is considered one of the first places in South Australia where Aboriginal and European people worked side by side at the whaling station that was established there in 1837. It has enormous heritage for both European settlement in Victor Harbor and for our First Nations people. Bluff has state heritage listing. Because of this and the Bluff's environmental, recreational, heritage and cultural significance, Council, with extensive community consultation, formulated the Bluff Master Plan, which was done as a tool to guide enhancements to protect the Bluff and to guide the Council on any decisions relating to the Bluff, including the areas around the Bluff and the Bluff Road. There is a significant conflict on a number of counts in relation to Mr. Taplin's proposal, including relevant council strategies and the South Australian Planning and Design Code, which highlights the Bluff as a conservation zone with significant landscape protection, state vegetation protection, local and state heritage with environmental overlays. The Bluff is part of the Victor Harbor Reconciliation Action Plan, as is our relationship with our Ngarrindjeri and our Raminjeri First Nations people. They have very clearly stated that the Bluff and its surrounding waters are sacred to their dreaming, and a strong spiritual connection to the Bluff still connects today. And that's quite different to what Mr. Taplin said when he came and spoke to Council and said that he had consulted with First Nations people and that they had no problem with him developing on the Bluff. The Bluff is part of Victor Harbor's open space and recreation strategy. It's part of the Victor Harbor Environmental Plan, and both strategies and council plans, which have been endorsed by Council, conflict with what Mr. Taplin wants. Continued and principal support for this proposal, given the knowledge that the Council has in relation to cultural, historical, environmental significance, would threaten and undermine Council's commitment to both climate change, reconciliation, and the plans and the strategies that both the Council and the state government have in relation to the Bluff that I mentioned previously. In particular, the Council has already sought community feedback on what the people of Victor Harbor want on the Bluff through the Bluff Master Plan consultation. If Council were to go out again, especially using its own money, promoting a project that is in complete contradiction to the feedback previously provided by our community, this would also undermine Council's processes of community consultation and decline any further community participation to support further consultations. I can understand that this causes a lot of emotion in the community, and the feedback that I've received non-stop over the last week has predominantly been saying, please don't have any development on the Bluff. For this reason, and the reasons that I've outlined for you, I will be voting in support of recommendation 1 to decline any further support in principles or otherwise for the Bluff Marina proposal submitted by Mr. Mark Taplin. And I'd like to have a division, please. So all those in favour of the recommendation, please stand. Councillor Henderson. Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Schiller. Myself as the casting vote. Against, Councillor Karimba, Councillor Kemp and Councillor Schofield. That proposal is carried. Motion carried, rather. We go to the second recommendation, that the decision made at the ordinary council meeting held on Monday, the 27th of March, to provide an allocation of $30,000 in the draft annual business plan and budget for the purposes of undertaking independent community consultation on the Bluff proposal be revoked. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Henderson, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, as I already said, even if we gave in principle support, I don't believe it's our responsibility to spend $30,000 on community consultation for a private enterprise. It's a complete misuse of ratepayer dollars, in my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie? No. Does anybody else want to speak to that? Councillor Schiller?
I'll be voting in favour of this at the moment, but I think we need to go back and look at another alternative at some point, whether it be $30,000 or whether it be by going to the community and say the boating authorities within the community and sit down and do a bit of preparation work. And then even at Mark, if he's got another location that's not so controversial, keep the door open for this style of development. But as it stands, because of the previous motion that's gone through, I think we need to reevaluate this one, drop this particular one right now with the proposal to take public consultation to that particular development and rewrite it and come back again.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Schofield?
Thank you. Look, I will vote for this, and I guess it comes down to the $30,000 it will cost our community. And again, I say that there are other ways that we can help Mr. Taplin. He states that he can't do public consultation himself. Well, I think perhaps we can help him without spending any money. But at this particular stage, I will support this one.
Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. It's interesting, isn't it, this subject about, this is not a decision-making process of whether we as a council are going to approve the development of the Bluff Marina. It's about public consultation is what we do under legislation, that anything affects our community, we must consult with them. And I think this is what we did. I remember at the elections when we were all going out campaigning, we also stated in various ways we want more open, transparent communication and honesty from our elected members and from our council.
Councillor Kemp, we are on the recommendation about whether to provide an allocation of $30,000 for the plan. Can you please stick to the recommendation?
I could call a point of order on your statement, Mayor, but the fact is that I'm talking about public consultation, which this is about. And public consultation is about being open and transparent and communication to our community. So I don't understand your interruption there. I'll continue. The point is $30,000 is an arbitrary figure. It's not actually set in concrete that will cost. It may cost 20, it might cost 40. But the point is an arbitrary figure to start with about the consultation. The reason why that figure has been put there is to get an independent person involved. So there's no biases, whether it's council or Mr. Taplin. If Mr. Taplin went ahead and did his own public consultation, which I think he's quite capable of doing, he may present a bias of view. This public consultation is brought about by the state government, wants to hear from Victor Harbor community, and that's part of the requirement. That the government said to Mr. Taplin before government will look at this, that they need principle and support from council to actually approach government. Council gave that. The government said to him, you need to get public consultation. You need to get the community to speak about this proposal and how it affects them. And this is what this process is. So as a elected member, you know, I'm here to represent the community, but also I want to hear from the community. And for us to understand what is being presented to us as a community as a whole, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, false information going around, people don't have the full understanding. My understanding of Mr Tapman's proposal, if he goes to public consultation with council on this, that there'll be more information provided, fuller drawings, concepts, designs, whatever, and provide the right information to the community and for the community to have a say. And that's what we're here for, is the community. We're legislated requirement to have public consultation. We need to hear from our community. Now, if the community comes back and said, we don't want this, I mean, that's set. I mean, the government's not going to support Mr Tapman. But if Mr Tapman head and goes to do his own public consultation, comes to government and says the community's in favour of it, great for him, but not for the community because we don't want it. So that's why we need, as a council, to be in this process to ensure that the survey that goes out is open and honest and transparent, that the right information will come back and the community is informed the right way in order for them to make a decision whether they want it or not. So this is what this motion is about. It's about public consultation, listening to our community, communicating with our community to get their points of views as to why, whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. Yes, we've heard all the arguments around about the First Nations issues, and I do feel for them and how they feel. But in the end, it's about the community as a whole to have a say about this proposal, because it will affect them. It will affect council in the long run if this gets up. If it doesn't get up, that's fine. So it's really about listening, and that's what I want to support this, not support this motion, to allow our community to speak on such a big development which has a major impact for us in a positive or a negative way, depending on how it goes. But I think as a council, we need to listen and contact our community. So it's $30,000, if it costs that much, is not a great deal of money at a $40 million budget of council. 30,000 is a drop in the ocean in the context of expenditure. But if we get the right answer from our community, we listen to our community, then I think it was money well spent.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Karimba.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councillor Kemp. $30,000 is a drop in the ocean when you consider we've just added $1 million to our wages, and I don't see anybody here with their knickers in a knot about that. $30,000 is nothing considering what this development can bring to this town. But I want to hear from the community, and that's what this is about. We are shutting this down because we've only listened to 3-4% of the community. Is that what we're going to do? Is this how we operate in this? Is this how it is? I'll tell you, China would be really well pleased with this. Seriously, it's just out of control. I've got nothing.
Councillor Karimba,
surprised.
point of order.
Yep, I'm done.
Councillor Henderson, would you like to close the debate? No. In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour of revoking the decision made at the council meeting on Monday the 27th to provide an allocation of $30,000 into the draft budget for the purposes of undertaking an independent community consultation on the Brough Marina proposal. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried, thank you.
I'll call a division.
Can I have a division, please? All those in favour? Councillor Henderson? Councillor McKenzie? Councillor Schiller? And Councillor Schofield? And those against? Councillor Karimba and Councillor Kemp. That motion is carried. Thank you. Sorry? Just go and get Braden. And then we come back to item 4.2, the annual business plan and budget. I'll just wait for the gallery to go. Can I call your attention to, on page 17 of item 4.2, under the heading Other Considerations, there are 1, 2, 3 dot points there and a further 2 dot points on the following page about items that have been raised subsequent to the formulation of the draft budget. If you want those items to be put in the draft budget, you'll need to move them. Councillor Mann, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I'd like to move a motion for the first bit. That's right.
For the first bit,
Yeah,
the
4.2.1.
for what 2.
Could you tell me what that is?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, sorry, that's the, okay, so that the insert project activity is removed or included. So which one would you like?
Yeah, I've got some wording for that and I've
Yep.
passed it up as well. So I can read that out now if you're happy with
Yes,
that.
please.
Perfect. So the wording is that the additional reserves maintenance employee, 1 FTE, environment and biodiversity initiatives, volunteer promotion video, investment attraction website and data, flood awareness consultation program, Stock Road feasibility study and costings be removed from the draft 2023-24 annual business plan budget for the purposes of public consultation.
Okay, I'll just wait for that to be typed out and I'll read it out again. Are there any other items that people would like removed?
I think that's all the
That's
possible
all.
ones.
Yep, thank you. Are there any that you want added, Braden?
I'm happy just to deal with that motion.
Now remember, this is for the budget to go out to community consultations, so items can be included and removed following public consultation, depending on what the public say. Yep. Okay, so that it now says that, whoop, hang on. That the additional reserves maintenance employee, one full-time, environmental and biodiversity initiatives, volunteer promotion video, investment attraction website and data, flood awareness consultation program, Stock Road feasibility study and costings be removed from the draft 2024 annual business plan and budget for the purposes of public consultation. You want to move that way, Councillor Mann?
Just changing stock. I think it's got sock in there.
Yep. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Schiller? Thank you. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Mann?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor. So as elected members may have taken from that, this motion removes all of the additional budget bids that have been put into the operating budget and really brings it back to the lowest that we can possibly have the operating budget without making the cuts to services, as my understanding is. So this removes a total of $294,000 of the new initiatives. It still maintains that deficit, noting the corporate systems review, but it brings the average rate rise for the average citizen from 7.4% or an additional $172 to an average rate rise of 6.2% or $146. As I said, my understanding with this is that it's all those extra things which have been added in through the course of from administration, from elected members, which adds up to nearly that $300,000. I guess my perspective in putting up this motion is more looking sort of strategically and also at the economic situation we're in now. With CPI being so high and creating such difficulties for our community and council, I think especially this year we've got an imperative to try and keep our rate rise as low as possible for our community. There's been years, and over the past 4 years, I've seen little projects such as many on this come up and they get added in, and by themselves they don't look like too much, but when you add them all together, we've got another $300,000, which of new things that council aren't currently doing or offering or providing. And I think at this stage, and we've heard it through the budget discussions around, this is that year of consolidating all that we're doing and looking at the corporate systems review, the changes that are going through with administration. I think this is the prime opportunity to put up a budget such as this one, where we say to our community, this is the lowest possible budget we can do in this period without adding in new initiatives and without cutting services. And we'll probably have many community members come back from the consultation saying this is still too high, and I appreciate that. But I think at this stage, this is the best we can do for our community, balancing on all the different factors. I think maybe next year we can look at going a step further, looking at whether we set the CEO's, one of the KPIs to be how can we look at reduction in some services, and really trying to balance the growth in our community, the high CPI, the economic environment with what we're delivering for our community. And I think that there's probably everyone in the chamber is probably a bit offended by at least one or two of the things that are being proposed to be removed. And so I appreciate that and the different views of why you might want to include some things. But I think in this sense, it's easy to say, no, we're not adding anything new. We're keeping it as low as we possibly can. And I think the community would appreciate that. And I think there's good grounds for doing this time around. CPI may come down. We'll look at the better situation in the future. But I think for this budget, my view is this is the best way to go, considering we've also got the ESCOSA review coming up next year, where an independent body will tell council whether they're financially sustainable or not. Now that's going to be a lot of work involved in that, and we're going to have to look at our long-term financial plan as well, and this is one aspect of that. And I think this sets a clear example to them as well that we're taking this seriously, and we're looking at how can we manage our rates and CPI, noting we're already in one of the higher rates brackets for the state. So I think these are all factors we need to be considering, and that's why I think all these new initiatives that we've added in can and should be taken out to reduce that average rate rise from 7.4% to 6.2%, as the administration figures have set out. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Shalil, would you like to speak to that?
Yep. A lot of the similar sentiments that Braden has articulated. The CPI at the moment, it's come back down a little, but we've just had a peak, and a lot of the costings were costed on those that peak, particularly obviously we've got wages that are sitting fairly high because of the negotiations with the union sitting pretty high, and just any costs that have been passed on, and our suppliers aren't going to reduce their costs at all. They're going to keep them at whatever level they had set them at previously. So we can't sort of undo what's already been put in place by suppliers. I don't see anything on that list that is an urgency at all. And I think I realise that the community wish to see us doing works within reserves and parks, but it's not a safety issue. It's not going to affect, lives and so forth. So that's why I've left that out. If we can try and shuffle around and see if we can fill that position by another role that's already existing potentially. And the only one that would be sitting there, the Stock Road concept plans. I strongly believe that that particular area isn't a risk area. It does have flooding at times, but it's not as high risk as maybe has been portrayed. And the Ford and the looking for roads to get out of that particular area, I don't think that safety concern is realistically there. So that's why I think I'd like to see the full list that we have there pulled out.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Does anybody else want to speak? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Kemp and then Councillor Schofield.
I won't agree with this. I won't support this as a whole. Some of those things I'd be happy to have taken out, including the volunteer promotion video, which was my recommendation. But I think the additional reserves maintenance employee needs to be kept in there. Every time we have a development, and we are a developing area, every time a development occurs and the developers move on, we inherit reserves, which then we have to maintain. But our staff resources are not going up at the same rate at which we are inheriting these reserves. We already have ratepayers complaining about the look of some of our reserves, rightly or wrongly, and we have a reputation to maintain as a council to keep our city and our surrounds looking good. I believe that employee position needs to remain in the budget. I think it's extremely important.
Councillor Henderson, did you want to make an amendment?
I will recommend make an amendment once I've finished talking.
Sorry.
Yes. The other thing I think we need to keep in there is the Environment and Biodiversity Initiative. Our Environment Minister, who's also our Deputy Premier, is working on a Biodiversity Act, which has never existed before. And I think it's very important that we, as a local government level, keep this as one of our important initiatives and within our sites. Because all other levels of government are working strongly in this area. It's a very important issue for our environment and region around here. So if those two things could be kept in, I'd be happy. So I'd like an amendment with those two staying in the budget. I'm happy for the others to be taken out.
So you're proposing an amendment to take those out of Councillor
that
Mann's
recommendation.
Do I have a
Can I
second?
have a point of order, please?
Who called?
I called a point of order.
What's your point of order?
Considering that each elected member may do an amendment, we only can do 2 amendments to one motion, to one recommendation. So I'm just wondering, can this stand alone, and then we have an opportunity for any other elected member to propose a new motion, either to keep in or take out what they want. So the way it is at the moment, once we have 2 amendments, no one else can do an amendment on what they want in and want out. So I'm just wondering whether we could, because there's only one recommendation here, can we have maybe potential 4 or 5 recommendations on this subject to give opportunity for elected members to actually put in or put out what they want, because there are other considerations which we haven't discussed yet.
We may be able to do that, Councillor Kemp. It's not a point of order. The point of orders are quite specific as to what they are, but that suggestion is one that we may be able to do. We do have a motion up there, and we actually have had somebody propose an amendment. So I just need to have a look at the meeting procedures to see whether or not we go through with the amendment. We didn't have a seconder, just a proposer at the moment. I didn't recognise you before that as a seconder, Councillor Schofield, but we do have a motion on the floor. So I just need to work out how we manage to do what you suggested. I've referred to the CEO who says that we've got a motion up. We need to deal with it with up to 2 amendments. If the motion is lost, then you can start again. So I will take on your amendment, Councillor Henderson and Councillor Schofield, you're seconding that. And the amendment is to take out or to keep in rather, the reserves maintenance employee and the environmental and biodiversity initiatives. To take them out rather from, as written from Councillor Mann's motion. You all clear on that? Are you clear on that, Councillor Schiller?
So we're voting on the amendment right now?
You're voting on the amendment right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got the amendment. All those in favour? No, hang on. It's not a formal debate the amendment. So you can debate the amendment now. I get amendments and formal motions a bit confused at times. Would you like to speak to your amendment? You've spoken to your amendment, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Schofield, do you want to speak?
Yes, look, I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Henderson. In particular, when we're looking at the addition of somebody in the reserves maintenance area. Very, very important for a number of reasons. And it does come into a safety one. It becomes into fire protection as well. So, and also the beautification that our community, of our town, that our community expect. And within that, I think the environment biodiversity initiatives should stay in, and there are many reasons for that, but they also come in and link in really within our maintenance area as well.
Does anybody else want to speak to the amendment? Councillor Schiller?
I will be speaking against the amendment. As I stated before, we have got some major projects coming up, and we need to run a pretty lean budget for the next couple of years in preparation for what's going to occur later in our long-term plan. So I realise that you know, we want these things, but we keep tacking things on and on and on, and we need to just pull back for a while. And I'm not saying don't put this in later on, maybe next year, some of these things could come in, but they're not essential at this point in time. And if we just can't go out there, we've got an even budget at the moment, supposedly, with our corporate systems upgrade being taken out in borrowings. It would be lovely to see $1 million surplus so that when we go into the next financial year, that we could have that buffer there. If we have something go wrong, we've got a bit of money sitting there that can be taken, and we're not affecting our budget too hard. So I'm not voting for the amendment.
Does anybody else want to speak to the amendment? Councillor Kemp?
Yeah, I'm not supporting the amendment. I did ask once, going back a few weeks ago, about what would 90,000 buy in contract work. Didn't receive a reply, so I would expect a contractor, if cutting reserves wouldn't be a great cost, and I'm not quite sure what one person extra would actually make a big difference to the workload to a degree, but you know, employing contractors to do that workload may be a better spending of the community's money in that respect, so I might be supporting the amendment.
Thank you. Just to catch you up, Councillor Quinton, we're looking at the annual business plan and budget, and Councillor Mann, you can see on the screen that first recommendation. Councillor Henderson suggested an amendment and taking out the volunteer video investment attraction website data flood awareness consultation program. Sorry, she's taken out the FTA and the environment biodiversity out of that, so that's what we're voting on now. Does anybody else want to speak to the amendment? I'll put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That amendment's lost. We go back to the original motion by Councillor Mann. Does Councillor Kemp, you wanted to speak to that? Have you spoken to that yet?
Not to the motion, no, but
To the motion? No.
I'll move an amendment.
You want to move an amendment?
Yes. Trying to get long range glasses on.
You spoke to the amendment, Councillor Kemp, so you can't move an amendment.
Okay, thank you.
They just told me that. They just told me.
Our council practice, sorry, through the mayor, is any member may move or second an amendment unless they have been the mover or seconder of the original motion. We have deviated from the regulations, so you can move an amendment, Councillor Kemp.
Sorry, when I get two members of staff telling me that you can't speak. Carry on.
I
Thank
think
you.
it's wishful thinking, but it's okay. No, honestly, I'll be serious now. I think my amendment is to, oh gosh, I'm just trying to get it together, to keep in the Stock Road feasibility and what is things, oh, sorry, got it here. Stock Road feasibility study and the flood awareness consultation program. I'd like them to be included in the budget. And the reason being is that the fact that these are about risk awareness, about hazards identified, and it's about community safety, and it's ensuring that our community, people who live in Stock Road or Crosey Hill Estate, do have access 365 days of the year, like most of us do have. And I just think that at any major event could isolate that community quite easily for a few days. So this feasibility study is to look at the proposals and how we can stop that happening. The other one is about the flood awareness consultation program. Has been identified that as a hazard along our rivers to our community, people who live close by to the river, that when those rivers do flood, those people can be flooded out, and of course their lives could be certainly inundated in that respect for safety. So this program in the Southfront report identified that we should do an awareness program, and that Southfront report's been out for a couple of years now, and council has done no work on this matter to help our community to understand how to help mitigate, prevent or evacuate in the event of a flood which may inundate their home with water. So I think these are two critical areas for our community, for safety and for protection of our people.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Do I have a second of that amendment? Thank you very much, Councillor Karembo. Do you want to speak to it?
Yes, thank you. I will be supporting this amendment. As Councillor Kemp said, this is about safety. And I'd actually ask the CEO if she could answer this question. If we don't support this motion, does it open us to litigation if we know that we could have consulted with the community and chose not to?
Through the mayor, no, it doesn't. Council has flood awareness information on its website and directs its residents to that place. And part of our flood awareness program, which is still going through the Stormwater Management Authority, once that's released, we will be doing some further information and consultation on it. So council has been doing those studies so that our community is aware, but we already have a significant amount of information on our website.
Does anybody else want to speak to the amendment? Thank you, Councillor Schiller.
I think I'm speaking mainly on the two, the flood awareness and the Stock Road consultation. I think people out in the community need to take some responsibility for their knowledge of where they're living and any kind of fire or emergency situation. And so I think that it's unwarranted to spend $30,000 on an awareness program, because we've just gone through a flood and we've seen it throughout our whole state. If you'd have to have blinkers on not to know your risks in where you live. Occasionally someone may get caught out, but I severely doubt that the average Joe on the block wouldn't have an understanding of how they need to prepare for an emergency. The Stock Road is a tricky one to talk about, or I try not to talk about what's gone on there. But during the campaign, we were getting several very unpleasant letters coming through, and I can't talk about those, but we went out there and had a look at the area on the peak of the flood, which was in November, I think, and we could still get through that road. So I think it's been blown out of proportion as well. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to the amendment?
Sorry, just a question, if I can.
Question?
Yeah, just clarifying, Councillor Schiller mentioned the costings were 30,000, but I've got 40,000 on here.
I've got 40,000.
Are they both 40,000 extra? Yeah.
They are both 40,000. Yep. Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to the amendment? In that case, I'll put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That amendment is lost. We go back to the original motion. You can read the amendment on the screen. You need to vote, Councillor Quinton, because you're in your chair. So can we just do that again? All those in favour of the amendment? Those against the amendment? That is lost. So we go back to the original motion. Yeah, no, you can help, Michael. Yep. And the original motion is okay. Okay. Okay, so the original motion, can you just scroll the screen down just a little bit? Yep, there we are. That the additional reserve maintenance employee, environment and biodiversity initiatives, volunteer promotion video, investment attraction website and data, flood awareness consultation program, Stock Road feasibility study and costings be removed from the draft annual business plan and budget for the purposes of public consultation. I think everybody's spoken now in relation to the amendments, so I'll put the original motion to the floor. Councillor Mann, do you want to close the debate? Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, no, I very much appreciate the views of my fellow elected members around the chamber, and I thought it might be the case where I'd probably annoy most of you in one way or another with it, but I think it is an important statement to the community, looking at how we can give them the lowest possible rate rise in these times. Just to add to a few of the comments that were made, I think in terms of Councillor Henderson around the volunteer video, that because it's such a small amount, I'm not sure whether administration might be able to find those costs in existing budget lines or within our in-house resource to prepare that. I very much appreciate the comments around the additional reserves maintenance employee and have a lot of respect for the work that our outdoor and park staff do, and I think it is needed. They are, it's certainly there needs more scope in that role, but I think from a strategic point of view, it'd be better to have that open reckons space strategy, which we're currently being prepared, so we know exactly what the area is we're looking to identify, and we're looking at what the level of maintenance is required before we start, before we add an extra FTE, and we might be able to find ways in which we can pull that FTE from somewhere else. So I think at this stage, whilst important, it is something that might be able to wait a financial year. But yeah, I would appreciate the support of the elected members on this, and I think putting it out to the community is it shows we are listening and we're looking at. In the past, yes, we might have added these small things on as what we need, but I think during these times, I think it's best to look at how we can tighten things up a bit, and often that means doing or not doing the things that we might like to do. So that'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. I'll now put the recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Next. Can we do that again? Sorry. All those in favour, put your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And those against? 4. That's carried. Thank you. I just ask, I know that you have an update of the uniform presentation of finances that Kelly has done for you on your desk. Kelly, did you need to change the recommendation too, given that those items were taken out of the budget?
Thank you, through the Mayor. No, so the recommendation is still correct. There was an error within one formula just in between the revenues and expenses. So that's been corrected in the financial statements, but the annual business plan content and the summary pages are correct.
Given the first recommendation that we've just had, where we had a number of items taken out of the budget, is that second recommendation in terms of the capital expenditure and operating deficit, do that remains the same?
Yes, so through the Mayor, so we've included that subject to approved amendments, Council endorsed, so that would be taking into account the amendments that you've just voted on as well. So
Okay.
we will adjust those figures based on those approved amendments.
Thank you. You'd like to move that way, Councillor Kemp?
I'd like to ask a question first. I did raise the issue around on the first recommendation, what opportunities that we could, other opportunities to put in other considerations, because we haven't discussed those ones. And because the motion was, the recommendation or the motion was worded in such a way, I felt that we wouldn't be able to actually include, because it would get too messy in my mind. So I asked a question, is it possible that we could motion or two if any elected member wanted to?
Sure. Well, what we might do is move that if there's any motions without notice in relation to inserting or removing items into the draft budget prior to going to recommendation 2, because you'll need to take that into account for recommendation 2.
Yeah, through the Mayor, that would be perfect. So within the report, we recommended that any amendments or motions could be brought forward from the floor, and then we would take into account all of those amendments with that last one.
Fantastic. Are there any other activities that you would like to be removed or included in the recommendation? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I'd like to move that we accept the Business Victor Harbor proposal as written up in the commentary blocks there about increasing their funding to support what they need to achieve. I believe that if we don't provide this support of funding, and considering that we just saved 264,000 because we removed 30,000 prior to this last motion in a different agenda item. So I think we can afford to actually include that amount of money in there to support Business Victor Harbor, because if we don't support them at the right level, then after 3 years after our agreement, it will be non-existent. I don't think they'll be able to achieve what they can currently at the moment. So I think we, again, as part of our economic development strategy in support of Business Victor Harbor, that will increase the funding up to the request of up to 180,000 from the current figure of 112, I think, 115.
So this is on page 17, the second dot point.
Yep.
A submission from Business Victor Harbor has been received requesting an increase in funding support from Council up to $180,000 in addition to the $115,000 already budgeted for.
So that would be an increase of what, 165,000?
No, it's only an additional $65,000 to what they're currently getting. So I'll just formulate your motion.
Okay, I was about to redo it for you.
It goes on to say the proposal received indicates the funds would be used to support additional staffing resources so that the Chamber of Commerce can continue to deliver support programs for local businesses.
Yeah, basically that's the commentary, and then I guess once the recommendation's been written, I think it's increasing by 65,000 budget line.
I've got a query. We've got another one there. Are we going to do these one by one with those there's 3 more additional ones that we've got there? So we're going to deal with this one and then talk to the others?
I think that's probably the best way, Angela, and then people can vote on what ones they want in and out.
Thank you.
Okay, so on you can see written up there now that The motion reads that funding support request from Business Victor Harbour for an additional amount of $65,000 be included in the draft annual business plan and budget for the purposes of public consultation. Do I have someone to second that? Thank you, Councillor Karemba. Do you want to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in support of this because we need to do what we can to help Business Victor Harbour, which will directly help our businesses. They've gone through a tough enough time, and I do think that this is a good addition. It's return on investment, but I would like to see them in the future reduce their requirement from council. I've had a discussion with Business Victor Harbour about that, and I think that's the direction they want to head in. So hopefully this does help them get along their way.
Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Schiller?
I'll be voting to include this one. I think similar sentiments. We've got to look at trying to bring new business into our city and our rural areas, and so by supporting this, and like Carlos says, not expecting to get these sorts of figures every time, but this particular occasion I support increasing their hours.
Thank you. Councillor Mann? Can you, sorry, I've got a question from Kelly.
Thank you. Sorry, through the Mayor, just so that I can have the direction to enforce this, the decision if it's made. In terms of including that amount, is it your intention to increase the rate rise to account for this, or to increase your deficit? So we've just pulled down the rate rise to a potential 6.2. Adding 65,000 in will result in a 0.3 increase to that, up to around 6.5. So just so that I'm clear on which way to go.
Increase the deficit.
We might, yeah, it's the mover's decision. Councillor Kemp, you were at the audit committee meeting today and heard the advice of the auditors in relation to this, so you'd be a good person to say, do you want the rates to rise, or do you want our deficit to increase?
Yeah, the audit committee spoke about this in length, and it came across that a 7.4% rate rise is sustainable and it's quite fair. So the things that you can do around this is either you reduce services in the way of that, or you can raise your rates, or you can raise your deficit. So I think if the audit committee was sitting comfortably at 7.4%, so raising it to 6.5 was well within the scope of the audit committee's recommendation. So I think that I'll sit at 6.5% rate rise.
So rate rise, thank you. So, yep. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Mann.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, tough one with this one, because it's definitely, I guess, the reason council provided this scheme and collaboration with Business Victor Harbour originally was because we saw the good intention, and we saw what could come from it. And I think that going back to those discussions, it was the provide us this X amount and then we'll reduce the reliance as we go along, or that was at least my understanding of it. But I do appreciate that there's more work out there and there's more costs associated, which is why they're looking for that that extra. I think it was what $65,000. But I guess going back to my intent around pulling out all the extras, it doesn't make much sense to then add other things back in. That definitely wasn't the intent of it. And I guess whilst or probably now, I guess a question to administration as to whether there's other avenues that can support Business Victor Harbour in providing this extra, noting I'm on the understanding that they're looking at being more regional, so less Victor Harbour based, and maybe they can tap into other councils and other funding bodies. I'm not sure if you can answer that question.
Through the Mayor, yes, Business Victor Harbour are looking to develop more of a regional model, and they are consulting with our neighbouring councils as we speak. I'm not sure how quickly that will come about, but definitely they are exploring those options. And yes, there is some funding available, which I know our manager of city activation has been speaking with Alexandrina and Yankalilla councils and Business Victor Harbour about how we can assist Business Harbour to access some of that grant funding that is available to provide more of regional support as well.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this item? In that case, then I'll put it to the floor. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kemp, do you want to close the debate?
Thanks, Mayor Jenkins. Look, I think it's interesting, and I do appreciate the comments around the chamber, and they're all valid in their perspective. But I just feel that if we want economic development and support our economic development strategy, we need to support the business of commerce to actually make that happen. Council can't do it on its own. I think it needs a collaboration, and that's what we've set up, and that's why we supported Business Victor Harbour. I think that, you know, this is, again, a part of the 3-year plan. And I think what they're asking for is some additional support so they can achieve that 3-year plan, what they set out to do. So I think by supporting this motion, I think that hopefully Business Victor Harbour will achieve their outcome and become self-sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. I'll put the motion to the floor now. All those and those against? That motion's
Call
carried.
division, please.
Sorry, Councillor Coimbra? Division? All those in favour, please stand. Sorry. It's a tied vote. Tied vote now. Councillor McKenzie? It's 4-4. I've got a casting vote. Okay. No. No, because I've got a casting vote. I've got to vote for it. Yeah. This is a really difficult one because I think it's really important to support Business Victor Harbour. They do an awful lot of work, really good work for the community here and for business community. But I'm reminded about in the budget workshops and the discussions that we have had about needs versus wants in our community in terms of the budget because it is so tight. This is going to, and we wanted our rates to be as low as possible because of the really tough economic times that our community is going through. Yes, we've lowered the rates somewhat with the discussion that, or the recommendation that Councillor Mann had, but now I see them creeping back up again with things that we really want. And I really want to be able to support Business Victor Harbour in providing extra money to them, as opposed to things that we really need. And I don't think that we need to do this year. We may be able to do it next year. I know that Business Victor Harbour is working with Mark Brisabilla to look at a grant and grant processes, and they're looking at other councils. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say no to this year. Because I think it's a want rather than an absolute need. And I think that keeping our rates as low as we possibly can, given that we are giving Business Victor Harbour $115,000 already, and we're working with them really collaboratively over a number of things. I think that we can do this next year, but I don't think that we can do it now. So I'm voting against this. And you want
Division,
a division?
please, yes.
All those in favour? In favour, councillor Mackenzie. I was going to Quentin. I'll go to get Nick and Mick mixed up. Councillor Karimbemba, councillor Kemp, and councillor Schiller. Those against, councillor Mann, councillor Henderson, councillor Quinton, and councillor Schofield, and councillor Jenkins, Mayor Jenkins. Okay. Before we go to number 2, is there anything else that people want taken in or out? Councillor Karimbemba.
Yeah, the Keene Road Bridge I'd like to remove, please.
Keene Road Bridge.
I did.
That's not down here. It's already taken out. Is there anything else that people want in or out? No, then councillor Schiller.
Just a discussion point. I wasn't part of the voting process of this particular item, but we did have an item come up last meeting, which was the Wattle Drive turning lanes, and you've just committed to it to being in the 23-24 budget. I'm not going to sit in the chamber to discuss this because I live on Wattle Drive, but just be aware that you did that last meeting.
There's nothing in here in relation to the Wattle Lane Drive.
Through the Mayor, if I may, it is not in the current budget and it's not in any recommendations. It is contained within your report if a member wishes to raise it, just as a dot point for discussion.
But she doesn't need to. No, but you don't need to declare a conflict of interest in relation to recommendation 2 on the business plan and budget.
I just thought it, because we had put it in last meeting, that we should just make people aware about it. I'm not saying yes or no to either. I'm actually sitting on the fence. But
if there's no further recommendations that come through, we'll go to recommendation 2, that council endorse the draft 2023-24 annual business plan and budget. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, councillor Mann, and seconded by councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? We now move to item 4.3, which is the budget amendment, replacement parking machines. And this is relating to this current budget that we're in at the moment. The recommendation is that council increase job number 6250, which is the parking computer IT capital, to $22,000 in the 2022-23 budget to support the purchase of replacement parking machines for the Esplanade car park and the Bluff boat ramp. Would somebody like to move that way? If nobody moves, then we don't have a motion on the floor. Councillor Mann?
Yep, I'll move that one.
Move that way. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that or have any questions? Does anybody have any questions relating to that? Councillor Karimbemba?
Yeah, my question is, I've had a look at these machines, but I don't know exactly the ins and outs of them. Do these new parking meters have any smart technology attached to them?
What do you mean by smart technology, councillor Karimbemba?
Oh, like you can remotely access them, you know, is there anything like that involved?
You can use your
No, I'm
credit
saying,
card.
can you monitor them remotely?
I don't know. Kathy?
Through the Mayor, yes, you can.
You can? So
Yeah.
they have smart technology attached to them?
Yes, it would reduce staff time from staff having to go down and download or identify that it's actually full if it's had any cash in it. but we can actually monitor them, make sure they're working effectively remotely, and it saves time of our public safety officers when they're out and about working.
Thank you.
Councillor Schofield?
Yes, I'm just wondering, the foreshore parking meters at the moment are credit card only. And there are people concerned because they have cash. And I've also noted there, since all the scams, there is more cash around than we've had previously. So are these going to cover both or one?
Yeah, just at the end there, Dustin, thank you. Our parking machine expert.
Not by choice. Thank you, Councillor Schofield, and through the Mayor. It's a very good point that you raise. We're actually having a number of issues due to the increased parts that are within the machines. So as you can imagine, opening the machines in the weather, we're having issues on the hoppers, credit card readers internally, because we're always in and out of the machines trying to fix. These machines are a fixed unit. They are a total cashless and ticketless unit, which will be a complete re-engagement of our community around this process. The last 3 months, we have had to take away the coin operation in our machines due to technical errors, time, cost to try and get maintenance out here. I've actually before I came to this meeting, was down there trying to get them back online again. It's a constant battle that we're having, so we're looking at a sustainable plan for the next 5 to 7 years to secure a functioning machine to not convolute our enforcement, because we're having a lot of appeals come through because 1 or 2 machines may have been down. So it's a very easy, trifling excuse for a resident to put in. It is a bit different, but for the last 3 months, due to the errors we've been having, we have been operating in a cashless environment. It has caused some concern, but it's actually streamlined our process and it's made it a lot more efficient. And I believe that with the right engagement, which we are working on as part of this rollout of the new machines, be a lot of community engagement, a lot of signage, we will be able to promote that more positively. We ideally would like to get away from the machines altogether, but I do not think we're there yet. And this is an intermediate response to be able to ensure that we have a machine to, I guess, account for our demographic and some of the residents, but we also offer a new digital environment as well that can be done on your phone. So you do not have to even go to a machine, which will be set up free of charge through a company that we have in association with machines. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thank you, Dustin. Does anyone have any other questions for Dustin while he's here? Councillor Karimba?
Thank you. So I guess my concern is with all the scams and everything that's going on and the fact that these are smart meters, how can you guarantee people's information?
Thank you, Councillor Karimba. Through the Mayor again. It's a very good question. This product that we're looking to purchase is through Data Consultants Australia, who are our current contact and our current contract with our parking machines. They maintain all of our current credit card data. They do this nationally. They are the biggest company nationally for parking machines, data collection. We will have extensive documents on our contracts and we operate in that environment now. So it's linking on the back of what we're already doing currently. Nothing actually changes in that space.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Dustin. I'm just considering, since we've been going through budget deliberations since January, I'm just wondering why it wasn't in the new budget. Why we're trying to expend money out of a current budget, which is hemorrhaging to a degree.
Very good question again, through the Mayor. I'm going to be perfectly honest. It was one of the tasks that was on my radar very early, and only been in that position for 2 months at that stage. Only started in December. I needed time to also understand what these machines were doing, and I couldn't do that until I had the actual experts who own the machines come down. Duncan Solutions brought 2 consultants down a month ago, and we went through exactly this lifespan, life cycle, longevity, what we're trying to get out of a sustainable machine. I learned a lot at that time, and we've had a lot of issues since that time also. So whilst it should have been potentially considered early, I didn't have all the stats and the facts at that time, and I do now. And I'm also seeing the amount of time not only myself, but the staff are putting in to try and maintain and keep these machines online every single day. So it's definitely become a bit more of a priority.
Supplement question, thank you, Mayor. This is an interim solution. So how long do you envisage that this solution will be in place for on return on investment before we have to spend X number of dollars to put new machines in at some stage?
Very good question again, Councillor Kemp. Through the Mayor, I believe, whilst I may say this is an interim solution, I believe what's best for the city is a fully digital environment with no machines. I would love to be in a position to be able to promote that to our community now, but this is the reason that we have requested this budget amendment, is to be able to support our community needs where we are. I'm learning very quickly about those needs, and I speak to a number of people in that car park, from locals to visitors, every single day that we're down there. So I don't think this is an interim. These machines could last up to 10 years and be fine, fit for purpose. But I do believe, along with our, I think it's our community plan 2030, if I may be correct, that has a car parking strategy built into it. This can then marry into that, whether we want to choose, if we're looking at different car parking options for our digital environment and not actually having machines. It's sort of, it's a middle step to establish that full digital environment, which, as we all know, that's where we're heading.
Any further discussion? Councillor Quimbury? Sure.
Now, I noticed that you said you want to go fully digital, and that's fantastic right up until the point the power goes out. So what happens when there is no power to these meters or the smart technology doesn't work? How do we, you know, monitor and do these sort of things?
Through the Mayor, good question, but I believe that our role as a regulator would be about responsibly regulating. So if there are errors or blackouts through machines, we have that now. It's quite a common process. We wouldn't be undertaking enforcement at that time. I don't believe it convolutes due to if there was a power out, because currently if that occurred, we'd have the same situation. It actually reduces the amount of moving parts. Obviously, like I said, with cash boxes, the main point out of all this is in 30th of June 2024, the 3G network will be turned off, I've been told, in Victor Harbor. The machines we have currently will not be able to function. So this is a move that we're trying to do to make sure that we meet the connectivity requirements, data and licensing requirements for collection of data. But I don't think that it undoes everything that we're doing. It's a very common purpose, common practice.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Mann, did you want to close the debate? I'll put it to the floor. Thank you, Dustin. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to item 4.4, which is the behavioural support policy and model behaviour management policy. There's one recommendation in 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. I'll do all of that en bloc. Would somebody like to move that en bloc? Councillor Henderson? And seconding that? Thank you, Councillor Quinton. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? I'll put it to the floor then. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. And that is the end of our special council meeting. Thank you all very, very much for that. It's 7:10.
Let members, if you want to have a quick 5-minute comfort break, and then we'll head straight